Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's webinar. We are in about halfway through. So this week we're talking about Chapter 6 of the Traffic Plans Manual, and this week it is going to be on signing tools. The signing tools are draw sign and guide signs. We will spend the most of this webinar talking about draw sign, guide signs just a little bit, and I also want to point out some of the resources that we do have. We have some cell libraries as well as their web pages, as well as options on our menus in order to get to the signing tools. As we get started, I'm going to go into MicroStation, and the reason I don't already have the file open like I normally would is because I wanted to make sure that I pointed out when you open up MicroStation, make sure that you are using this project option down here in order to set what project you're going to be working in. It's very important for the draw sign tool. If you have signs that you create in guide signs and you want to place them in your file using draw sign, I have to have that variable set correctly or it will not find your signs. Okay, so like I said, I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood. Open it using the project. All right, so we're going to go into the DSGN SP this morning and take a look at what we have. All right, first let's take a quick peek at what resources we have. On the traffic plans menu for the FDOT menu, there is signing and pavement markings, and there are cell libraries. You can get to the cell web pages. We have out there cell libraries that have the MUTCD, FTP signs. So there's all different types. We have several different libraries that have signs, and trying to make it easier to locate some of those signs. There's a lot of them. Best way to find them, especially if they're MUTCD signs, is to know what sign it is that you're looking for by the naming convention. We also have a link here to the draw sign program, which you can use to open it up. We also have on the FDOT task menu for the FDOT plans development. If you go down to traffic plans, we have this first row is for signing and pavement markings. So this third one here is to create sign assemblies, which is the draw sign program. Okay, so this is draw sign. Through the process, it creates sign assemblies. In order to create a sign assembly, we have to make sure that we have the checkbox toggled on. We want to double check our preferences. Okay, our preferences, I've set up what DDB file are you going to use. It has a signing category. I recommend that you don't change any of this stuff that's in here for the signs. It's all of the items that we have in the DDB for the signs have been customized to work with the draw sign program. So to calculate signs and all, it's all using the draw sign program. It tells where our sign panels are, our resources. So there's a lot of information here that needs to be set. It should be set by default, but it never hurts to check. The other thing in here is the sign panel level overrides. And basically, I can override if the symbology for any of the states. Okay, whether it's existing, proposed, if I'm going to relocate it, remove it. So I can come in here and I can tell it, okay, I have both proposed and then I'm going to remove it. If I wanted to set it to a different symbology, I could. Typically proposed, we leave alone, and then the rest of them, remove, relocate, and existing, we set to the existing levels so that when it comes in, it looks dashed. Okay, so it'll override that symbology for us. All right, so I'm going to tell this okay. So the next thing we need to do is to start creating a panel. And as we create this, go through this first exercise, I'll go through each of these panel or each of these tabs in more detail. Okay, so to get started, what you want to do is toggle on the assembly option. Okay, pick what sign that you want. So in this first exercise, we are going to be using route markers, and I want to use the M1-4S, which is here. Okay, I want to make sure that the first panel that I do, it's the main panel. And I toggle that on and tell it that it is the main panel. The rest of the panels, this will be turned off per assembly. So I select my main panel. I tell it what size do I want. In this case, it's a 30 by 24. And if any of my, well, first let me get to the state. This is going to be a proposed sign. Okay, and then if there's any kind of data field inside the sign, the different fields down here below will unghost so that you can go in and set that property or that value. You can see it if I go to Control B. If I turn on my data fields, typically, there it goes. You can see how many characters is in that data field if you have your data fields turned on. In this case, this is going to be for 319. Okay. Once I have the panel properties tab filled out, then I want to come up here and tell it to create a new sign assembly. Okay. This assembly name is going to get used later on. So you're going to want to take this S out before you actually place the panel. All right, so now I have that set. Now I can come over here to these buttons. Depending on which tab I have open, these will ghost and unghost accordingly. So if I'm in the panel properties or panel location tabs, I'll see the place and update panel options. If I'm in post properties or location, then my place signpost and update signpost will come, it will come up. All right. So at no point are you really going to see everything lit up. Okay, so I want to place, I could go in and place this sign panel, but first I want to look at the panel location. I have two different options under location. I can set it by origin or along an element. If I set it by origin, then I'm actually just placing this wherever. I'm just picking a point, okay? So that's one option. The other option is that you can set it along an element. There's dialog changes. There's a lot more here if that's what I decide to do. I have two options. If I want to use an element, I can either use a DGN element or I can use a chain. Make sure that you do have a GPK selected. I can go to File to do that. A lot of times, it didn't do it this time, and I think it's because it's in the resources. The first time you ever open this tool, it's going to ask you for the GPK file. Pick your chain. In this case, I'm going to use centerline construction. And then I can set my station and offset. If I untoggle one of these, it makes it a variable. So I can set this so that it places it wherever I need it to place it. I have three options on my rotation, whether it's dynamic, 2 points, absolute, or relative. If I say absolute, I can put in an angle here and it'll place it at that angle, and that angle is per your view. And so in this case, if I follow along with the exercise, I'm going to do it by origin, and I'm going to set this to absolute with an angle of 270. It's not as critical where you place the panels as it is where you place your posts. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is look at my sign labeling preferences. Typically, the first time you place the panels, until you get all of your panels in, you pretty much will probably want to, this is personal preference, turn these off so that it doesn't place a label when you place the panel, and then come back after you have the entire assembly set, then come back in and place all of the labels for the entire assembly. Makes it a little bit easier to do it all at one time. But to explain what is in this dialog, we have two different modes. I can place this information as a cell, or I can place the information as text. It's important, even if you are going to place a label as a cell, that you place the label as, set the information in here as text, because this is going to set the text symbology that it's going to use in the cells. So I can come in here and it brings up, it's just like any other GeoPack dialog for setting symbology, set the label. I recommend that you set it to a height and width equal to the standard scale of 1, which is 0.07. Set your font, this can be F dot, it can be F dot bold, and then if you set it to 0.07, just make sure that you use the scale option and set that scale at a 1. So that's saying this is what it equals at a scale of 1. That way I can come back in later, and if I needed to change the scale for whatever reason, it will multiply this out for me based on my plot scale option. Okay, and clicking inside of this black box, it sets the justification. So I want my justification to be center bottom. All right, tell that okay. So basically I would do that for my name, I would do it for the size, and this is the spacing in between these labels. If you just place it as text, this can be set to something like 6, but we're going to be using a cell, and if I click on the hourglass next to these, you've got to toggle them on for use, and then come in here. I have different options in here of cells that are available. For my sign panels, I want to use the sign panel number for the name. That's the MUTCD name, like R1-1 is a stop sign, okay? And so in this case, it's the M104. Then my panel size is where I would want to put in here. So basically, this gives me the oval, and this gives me just a data field, okay? Some of these, like for the pay item, it has a box or an oval, or just a data field. I recommend that you talk to your project managers with your districts. Like I said, this is personal preference, how you want to show those. This is what I know to be pretty much typically standard. But like I said, you can place these in a box as well. So I'm going to tell this, once I've selected which cell I want, tell it OK. Spacing of 12 works pretty good. Again, you may want to play with that if you want it to be closer together, further apart, play with the spacing. Once I have all that set, okay. All right, this angle in here, it sets the angle of the text placed in the file. If I lock this, then it sets that angle, and this angle is basically, if you rotated this design so that north was actually pointing up, true north, okay, so you unrotate the view, then the angle of where I want to place this text would be at this 149.59, okay. For this exercise, I'm going to turn these off. Change, actually I can leave it like that. I just need to turn them off. Tell it okay, because I don't want to place it. Okay, and then I want to place the sign panel. And where we're placing it is going to be, and I didn't change my scale. I need that to be 50. Okay, so if you get it out here, and it's as simple as that, you get it out here in your design and you go, oh, it's too small. You can change that without having to re-go through everything. It's just a matter of changing it, and changes will show up immediately. Where we're placing this is going to be at around 702. And I'm going to place this somewhere out here, far enough away that I'll be able to get the signpost in here and draw a leader line from the signpost to my sign panel. Now that I've placed it, I can go back in and I can choose other signs that may need to go onto this signpost in here with it. So in this case, I want to come back into here and I want to grab the north sign, which is M3-1. Yes. Okay. And like I said before, this is not, 319 is your main panel, so make sure that this is toggled off. There can only be one. And the size that I want to use is the 24 by 12. Okay, it's going to be proposed, and then I want to place the sign panel. Okay, so there is my panels. Okay, so next thing that I need to do is look at my posts. So I'm going to go to Post Properties. There's kind of a workflow, and I think a lot of people wind up having a little bit of confusion on making sure this works right. First thing that I want to do is set this bottom information. I want to tell it what type of a sign or installation it's going to be. It's going to be a ground-mounted sign. Okay, but we have all these other options here. My state is going to be proposed. My mounting is going to be a single or multi-post in this case. And I want to furnish and install. And you can see there's all the other options in here as well. And I believe the only time that you're going to see the width, area, and length show up is when it is I want to say a cantilever, which I didn't see in there, but there's only one option that will allow that to pop up. So for most of our signs, we don't need to input this information. If it ungoes with the options that you choose, then you would want to set this. So you set everything on the bottom for the installation method, and then you want to click Auto Select. What Auto Select does is it goes through, dang it, why did it do that? I know I had it selected. All right, so now let's look at this. If this happens to you, you can identify an existing sign, accept it. When I do, and it for some reason, I know I set this right, is main panel, go back and tell it to update your sign panel. And now your main should be set. So this option here is to identify a sign assembly that you've already got in the file. All right, so now I can go back to my post properties and hit auto select. So if it has the main panel, what you should see is this prompt. And this prompt is asking you, okay, is this a single-sided sign? Is it back-to-back? What do I have out here? This happens to be a single-sided sign, and I'm going to tell it okay. Notice that it went from the multi-post sign symbol to the single post. So based on the area of these signs, it knows that it needs to be a single post sign. Next, I want to look at the post location. In this case, I'm going to tell it I want it to be a long element. Okay, I missed a step. Let's step back. We have selected our post. I want to go back to this point with my panel location. I want to go ahead and place these panel labels. So I need to go to Preferences, turn these back on, and place panel label. And it's going to prompt you to ID. If you look in the bottom down here, it's going to say ID existing sign panel. So I select that panel, accept it, and notice that I now have a label on my cursor. So I can come in here and place this sign panel. You can use AccuDraw, you can snap to a particular sign, or you can eyeball it. Like I said, this is text. All right. And then go back in and say place panel again, label. Notice that it changed it, the information based on the sign. And if I want to tentative snap, I can tentative snap to this. Click O if you've got AccuDraw on, and then it will, okay, not work for me this time, and place the label. It's supposed to snap, when you snap to something and you hit the O, it should have set that origin and then allowed me to just keep it in line. Now I have those in there. Let's go back to the post location. So for the post location, okay, I want to set the options that I have for the post location are the same as the panel location. For the post, I want to use a long element, and I'm going to set it to the chain of CLCon. And then I want to set the stationing, so 702 plus 20. And I'm going to give it an offset of 47.5. I believe that's what I want. You need to go back and look at the indexes to figure out what case scenario you have. Is it a rural road? Is it curb and gutter? Index is 17302, and it has the different cases in there that tells you how far off your sign panel and ultimately that post needs to be from your edge of pavement. In this case, the 47.5, I need to have a minimum of 4.5 feet, which is 2 feet plus 2.5 feet for that sign width to put it at the back of my sidewalk, and that's based on case 3 of that index. So whenever I do that, it puts it in the middle of my sidewalk whenever I place it. So what I've done is just scooted that back a few feet, and placing it at 47.5, it's going to place that post right at the back of sidewalk. Okay, this is going to be absolute. I'm going to place that at 180 degrees so that it faces the right direction. I've already set label preferences in here. I'm going to use the pay item for my pay item number. I'm using the box, which is here. And then for the pay item, the alternate, if you had one, I'm going to use the same one. And for my stationing, I'm going to use the station label, which is just a data field. And then I'm giving it a spacing of 6 in here. I'm opting to not place the stationing on my leader line. That is an option that you can do if you want, so that as you place it, it would just draw your stationing on the line. But sometimes it gets a little finicky, and this is my personal preference. I like to put it with the pay item number below it, so all of that information is right there with the label, because a lot of times if you're, especially in rural situations, you've got a lot of signs that may be here together, and trying to read that station, it can get pretty messy. So for me, I like to go in here and not put it on the leader line, but that is an option. Set your leader line symbology. So that's going to be on leader line underscore DP. Okay, typically we don't use a terminator, but if that's personal preference and you wanted to, you could. So the option is available. So I'm going to tell all of this okay. I have my angle set. Okay, and then the next thing I want to do, I don't want to do this as a place post label. I want to come over here to place signpost. When I do that, notice that it automatically, it's putting my post in here at that location. It gives me, it didn't, I must have selected something else when I was in there a second ago. I'm supposed to put that in a box. Place that, and you can rotate this to wherever I need to. Accept it. Then it gives you the option to place your leader line. It's from the center of my signpost cell, and snap that to the corner here of your main sign panel. And that's placing it. Yeah, I did. So that needs to be pay item number box. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do is hit Control Z to undo that. Place my signpost. accept its location, place. Now this should work. Nope, there it goes. Well, that's based on AccuDraw. And place it. And the leader line. Ta-da! Now we have a sign post, our full sign assembly with post and the labels and the panels all placed into the file. Now, if I look, draw sign behind the scenes, what they've done, if I go to, I'm going to go to Geopack and then look at the element attributes, and I'm going to identify this post. Let me open this up. Okay. You'll notice in here there are 4 pay item ad hocs. So based on what is going on with my sign assembly, it looks at what these are set to, how big they are. It determines, okay, I have this much area, and it calculates for me based on all of those sign panel areas. Okay, it sets up for me my pay item. It determines what that is. Okay, and it also uses the area of all of my panels to go in and set the second digit. So it determines what is the pay item in order to accomplish what we've set. And then D&C Manager, when I come back later to do my quantities, which we'll do in a couple of weeks, the quantities is set to ad hocs. So whenever it finds the posts, it's looking for the ad hocs that have been set on these posts in order to figure out what it is, what pay item, and then quantify it for us. So we've placed a single post. Now I want to go back in, and this will be a little bit faster this time, because this time we're going to be going in and place a multi-post, but I've already explained most of these options already. So now I can go back in and let's look at what happens if I needed a multi-post. So on the other side of the road over here, we're going to create another assembly. So if I go into draw sign, I'm going to go back to the panel properties, and I want this route, and I'm going to use the same 319. What I want to do before I start placing panels or doing anything else is that I want to create another assembly. And it's going to give me that S-1 because it doesn't exist because I renamed the last assembly. So I need to take the S out and rename this -2. Okay. Because if I leave the S, then it winds up getting into this information and you don't want it there. All right. So that's -2. Make sure that it is main panel. Hope that it sticks. And we're going to be placing that one on the other side of the road. So I'm going to say place panel. Actually, no, I need to look at location first. I need to, since it's on the other side of the road, I need to change the angle so that it's 90 degrees instead of 270. Go into my preferences. I'm going to turn these back off. Okay, and then place this panel. All right, so I have the first one, and I'm also going to go in here, change that. All right, so now what I need to do is go back into my panel properties and let's pick the rest of the signs that we want to go on here. So I'm going to grab the M1-4, which only has 2. I'm going to change my field down here to 98. I'm going to tab out of it. I can see that it's in here. I don't want this one to be a main panel, and the size is, I'm looking at the wrong one, 24 by 24. It's not 30 by 24. And I want to place this panel. Okay, and I want this panel to be lined up, and you'll notice that with AccuDraw here, it's remembering that origin. And I'm going to place this in next to the 319 sign. Then I want to go in and select some arrows to go up underneath it. Okay, so I need M6-4. Okay, and that is going to be 21 by 15. It's not a main panel either. Place this panel. Okay, this one is going up underneath the 98. And then I want a left arrow. And actually, I probably should have placed this on this side. I can move these once they've been placed in here. And that's fine. 98 needs to go on this side. Come on, snap where I want it to. It's not going to. And then I want to find the last arrow, which is M6-1R. That one. And again, it's going to be 21 by 15. And place that one. That one's going to go up underneath, and I'm going to snap to the midpoint of the bottom of that panel. Hit O to move my origin, and place this out here. Okay, so I've got my signs in here. Then I want to go to my post properties. Actually, no, I want to go to label all of these first, I think. No, actually I don't, because on this side of the road I would have the labels and then the pay item number. And this, I mean, you can put it above it if you wanted to. You can put it to the side if you wanted to. But typically you want to put these where the labels are, it's easy to identify which sign is which with the names. I'm going to follow along with the exercise and we will place these later. All right, so let's go over to post properties. It's ground mount, it's proposed, single, multi, furnish and install. Okay, so all of this stayed the same. So I'm going to hit auto select so it will determine, do the calculations. It's single sided and accept it. That should have been a multi-post. Why did that not show up as a multi-post? Maybe that's not the one. I know there's one of these that's a multi-post sign. Oops, I didn't go to my location. Okay, set your stationing. It's going to be at 702 plus 87. And this is going to be minus 48 plus 50. Now place the post. Place your pay item information. Attach your leader line. No, that was supposed to be single post. Okay. And then go back in with my panel location and I'm going to start adding in my labels. So I'm going to start with this one. Oh, I didn't turn them on. Duh. So I have that sign. I mean, you could place them over here, but if there was another sign to go in here, you just have to know your project. So I'm going to place that label and then this label on top of it so that they're in the same order that my signs are in. Then I'm going to go over here to these, place this label, and I'm doing this quickly. You would want to get this a little bit neater probably than what I'm doing, and lined up just so it's more professional looking, but you'd want these to be lined up. And you have, there's our second side. Okay, this is where I'm going to go back now to the exercise I skipped. What happens if your post that you placed, it moves? So for instance, we're going to take a look at this sign that we placed down here. Okay, if I needed to move this sign, I can come in with MicroStation tools and actually just move it. Okay, So if I grab this, and let's just move this 15 feet, okay? And I used AccuDraw to do that. So I moved this sign over 15 feet. Well, that information is, it's down here, or it could be on the leader line for my station location. So what I want to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to identify this assembly to make sure I'm looking at the right one. Okay. And then once I've identified it, it sees where it is. I want to go over here to my post so that I get this update signpost. And I want to click on update signpost. It's going to ask me again if it's single-sided. I'm going to tell it okay. And notice that it fixed my leader line. Now, if I had the stationing on the leader line, it would have updated that station information. But because I've opted to put this down here instead, I've got to basically go back in here and replace that post label. Okay, it should have given me that. I don't have to replace the post. I've done this too before and it's just giving me fits today. Ah, I had to select the post. Forgot that step. And notice now that my label, there, and it wants to replace the leader line too. I shouldn't need to do that. Okay, so now you can see that it placed it, and that's how I can get the stationing updated without having to edit text when it's sitting down here instead of being on the leader line. Okay, so we've looked at updating the panels if necessary, if you realize something's not right, like we missed the main panel, and getting that set. We've seen how to come back in and place labels. We've seen how to come back in and modify and update the post location. It's really, that's pretty much it. The biggest thing to remember whenever you're using the draw sign is to make sure that when you go to start a new assembly, make sure that you click on this create new assembly before you place the panel. If I were to add another panel in here right now without clicking on create new, it would, whatever assembly is active, it would add those panels to what it thinks is this assembly, because right now it's -1, which is this one. And I don't want it to do that. So make sure that as you go through, kind of be methodical and remember that. There is an option here under create assembly by selection set. And what it does is it allows you to, if I used any of the, like say I went in and I opened up a cell library and I placed the signs that I wanted, okay, I can take and create a selection set of your post and your panels and tell it you want to create an assembly based on that selection set, and that's what this button does for me. So if you get a file that you inherit that has this information, but it's not been tagged with this information out here on the signposts, that's one way to get it on there, is you can use this create assembly by selection set. Yes, I did not change this angle right here. So if I go to, I can actually rotate that. And this won't have any effect on anything. Oops. Thank you. Let me grab the center of it and fix that. That's another thing, is as you go through, make sure you go from one sign to another. If it is on the other side of the road or it's at a different angle, make sure that you pay attention to that. I missed that step. Sorry, guys. Can you explain why did you remove the S when you picked the sign assembly? If I had left the S in there, it uses the assembly name in some of the information. And actually, it put the S in here anyway because that's the name of the sign. I guess you don't have to remove the S, but you do need to come back in. If you do have things like this S, you need to come back in and change it because that's not the name of the sign. There's different versions of the sign, but they're all still M1-4. Edit text or use the edit inner data field, and you can take the S out of there. Looks like you placed your post exactly at the back of sidewalk. Shouldn't the edge of the panel be at back of sidewalk at least? No, it doesn't have to be. Let me, real quick, design standards. Let me go, this may help it make sense. Typical placement for single and multi-post signs. If I look at this index, and I'm looking at case 3, which is this one right here, notice that the panel itself is across the sidewalk. It depends on what case you pick as to how far out you're going to make it. It can also be a district preference. The district that you're working for may not want to have the sign panels out over their sidewalk at all, in which case you need to move that post further over. This is for construction, so construction's going to know that whoever the contractor is, what they need to do out here, but they have to place this at a 7 to 8 foot above the sidewalk so that it should be out of people's way to walk underneath it, unless they're really, really tall people, because they have to have it at least 7 feet. So it does not have to be out of the sidewalk. Is there a way to omit globally remove region of stationing? That I'd have to look into. It is formatted by the program, so I would need to go back in and see if there's a way to do that, because it's not anywhere in here with my preferences to set it to not place that. You could go in and look for this, the R space 1 using the text edit or find and replace. So if I go to edit, find replace text, and I look for space R space 1, I should be able to replace that with nothing. Well, it may not be finding it because it's in a cell. Dang it, in cells, find. Make sure that it is doing what it should be doing, hit replace, and when that works, hit replace all. And it worked. So then you can go in and hit replace all, and very quickly you've just gotten rid of the region 1. How can you see a list of all of your assembly names so it's not repeated? That's a very good question. I need to get into that to see if it's even possible, because honestly, I'm not sure. So let me check into that, and whenever I get the Q&A document finished, I will have researched that, and the answer will be in the Q&A document that gets posted out there with the webinar. There's one more thing that I do want to show you. You can create signs using guide signs, and I was going to try to show you that today, but I've had some technical difficulties getting it loaded onto my machine. But we do have a webinar. If you go out to our posted webinars page, there is a webinar that was done by Michael Blakely. He's one of our guys in District 2 that does traffic plans, and he's very good with guide signs. And there's a webinar on how it functions. I recommend that you go out there and look at that. There are 2 exercises in the manual. One is creating some guide signs, and the second exercise is getting that guide sign onto one of the formatted sheets for your signs. Okay, so there are exercises, but it's also documented in that webinar. What I want to show you real quick is, what do you do if you have one of those signs and you want to place them in your file using DrawSign? The way DrawSign is set up is it is looking for a specific cell library and it is got to be in a special location, and the sign panels all have to be named S-01, 02, and you can have up to 120 in your cell library, okay? But so let's take a look at that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and go over to, I have a guide sign worksheet file, the GSWKSP01. I've already got one out there. Let's open that real quick. And there are 4 signs, and these are part of the data set. Actually, there's 3 signs in here. This is part of the data set. So if you wanted to play with this and practice, it's out there. What I'm going to do to make this easier on myself is I'm going to turn off these dimensions. The sign and the text is different from the dimensions. The other thing is that when you create guide signs, these are going to be the color of the sign panel, whether they're brown or green or whatever you make, okay? In order for it to show up on our sheets, we really want that to be black and white. So there is an option, and it is documented in the manual, to go into guide signs and turn off that color so that it is just the black and white text. So I get this ready. The first thing I need to do is I need to create that cell library. So I'm going to go to Element Cells. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to tell it File, New. And I want to place this in my project directory cell. So we have a cell directory located in the standard project directory structure. Find that directory, and we want to name it, it's Guide Signs Worksheet. Let's see, it's GSWKSP.cel. Okay, and save that. All right, so now that's sitting out there in my in my project directory. Now I need to start creating a cell. Easiest way to do that is to go down here to Drawing, and I have in here, and this is basically the main classic, so I can also get to these tools, cells, okay? I can also get to them from here. But I want to grab this one that has a little O, and it defines a cell origin, okay? I want to place this, see the little plus sign? I want to place it in the middle of the bottom of my sign panel, okay? Place a fence, or you can use a selection set. And actually I was having problems with fence. Create a selection set of that, and then tell it, accept it. Nope, it's still not letting me do it. Place fence. Okay, so I have to use the place fence and then tell it to create. I'm going to give it a name, and you can name this anything you want. The description's anything you want. The name has to be S, I have my cap locks on, S-01. Has to be that. It cannot be anything else. And I'm verifying that it does have the 0. Yes, it does. Okay, so S-01. And I can give it any description that I want. So I can call this one Shell Point Spring Creek Newport. Okay, and tell it to create. So once I have this created, then I'm going to go back to my design file. I can close the cell library. We're going to place this sign over here. And I'm going to go back to my panel properties. There is an option, and see there's a bunch of options in here, but there are options for special signs. And so whichever one you need, so S01 is the one I want. So I'm going to grab this first option, and notice that it's already pre-populated. It looks for 1 through 20. I'm grabbing S01. I do want it to be the main panel. It will be proposed. The size, however, I've added this size in here, and actually no, it's not in here. 92 by 48 is the size of this particular sign, but I don't have that available here. So what do you need to do? Okay, once I've clicked here, hit escape, and notice that this is no longer grayed and it's like I can actually write to this. I'm going to physically type in here the dimensions that I need, which is a 42, oops, I forgot the X, 42 by 48 inch, comma, and then you need to give it the area of that sign so that it can use that area in the calculations, which is 30.67. Okay, tab out of that, and I now have that set in here as my sign panel. Once I've set this, then I'm going to go in here and click Create New Sign Assembly and look at my panel. I'm going to turn those off. No, I can turn those on in this case because I'm only placing the one panel. And I want to place the sign panel. Whoa, it's huge. See that? I want this to be 5.43. And I know I created that with the guide sign coloring turned off. Let me double check something. Oh, B. But I want the fill. I don't know. I did this the other day and it worked just fine. I'm not sure why it's not. Why it's coming in color. And I'm seeing it looks bubbled on the outside edges, which means that my panel properties reset itself. So before I place it, I need to make it main, make it proposed. And I'm going to place this, I know it's somewhere out in here. And then I need to, before I place my label, I need to change this to 50 so that I can place that in here. Go to my post properties. This stayed the same. Hit auto select. Dang it, it did it again. Is main proposed update. Dang it. All right, ID 5.43. Okay, we're good. I'm going to change this back to 50 before I place my post. This table, by the way, notice that I changed that scale to 5.43, and some of you are probably going, where did you get that? If you look in the manual, there is a table in there, and it has a conversion factor already set up for you. So if you know it's a 20 scale, 40 scale, 50 scale, whatever scale your sheet happens to be, from guide signs to get it into our design, what scale to use up here, it's listed in that table. For a 50 scale, I happen to know it's 5.43, in case somebody had that question. All right, so my post properties, auto select, and I just updated that. Okay. My day started out today just acting really strange. I didn't want to set that. Post mounted, proposed, panel properties, ID this, is main panel, update the sign panel. ID this, ID that. Okay, looks good. Auto select. Now notice that it's popping over and it's telling me, is it 2, 3, or 4 post? So this is going to be, this is saying this is no longer a single post sign because of the size of the sign. This has to be a multi-post sign. So it's calculated and figured that out for me. I'm going to place the post. I'm going to look at my post location. So I have, let's see, we want to place this at 705 plus 50. And this one I made a little bit further off, minus 50 feet. this needs to be set to, in this exercise, we're doing this relative, set the angle to 0. And then let's place this post. All right, so there's my signpost. You may even decide, okay, that's closer than I want it. Let's move this out -55 because it's a bigger sign. And it'll move that out, do the math, put it where it needs to be, change my scale for my symbol here. And then I can place my pay item information, place that's my leader line, and I have it set in there. And then, like I said, all of these, once I have, you just go along your project and you keep putting in all the signs that you need. And then once you get done, all of my pay items will be on my posts. They're not on the panels. That way, whenever I get to the point of doing my quantities, it should be a simple matter of simply attaching it to my clip file and grabbing that entire category and calculating it for me. You can go into named groups. I forgot about that. Each one of these is a named group. So I can go, if I wanted to see what's out there, I could go into, and I hardly ever get in here, but you can go down into named groups and you can see in here what groups have been created in the file. And then you wouldn't have duplicates. What about a case at a bridge? Okay, you can still place them, but one of my post properties in here, instead of ground mount, maybe it was over on the panel properties, but basically there is an option in here for the bridge, and you set it up so that it knows it's on the bridge and it will put it out there. I will find that and I will document that in the Q&A. Why do we create a cell and not a DGN lib? It's looking for the cell library. I mean, it's specifically looking for that guide sign gswksp.cel, and that's written into the program. And how did I get drawsign to pick up the guide sign cell library again? In order for it to work, the directory path is set by a microstation, it's not one of our configuration variables. It's a microstation configuration variable for the project. And that gets set when you open a file, setting it to use the PCF. So when I first open, I make sure I use the project option to set my project and then open up my microstation file. That sets it to the correct library location so that whenever I'm creating my signs, if I want to pick one of those specials, it finds it in the right location. If you have any questions, please give me a call. I'll get the Q&A done up. I hope you guys have a great day, great rest of your week, and thanks for attending.